Hey friends, I wanted to jump on here and just say that it's time for GM Ryan Poles to declare that the Velus Jones Jr. experiment, it's officially a bust. And with that, we got to make way for stud undrafted free agent returner Ian Wheeler. Let's just make a better use of this roster spot. And GM Ryan Poles, has said over and over that it's going to be tough to make this team now. But he's not necessarily talking about the starters. He's talking about that it's going to be difficult to make it on this team as a depth piece, as a special teams player. And this is just an example of that. So I think the Chicago Bears may have unearthed an absolute gem in former Howard running back and special teams standout Ian Wheeler. First off, he's an absolute burner. He ran a 4.3940 at the combine. And although he's not a threat to be a starting running back on this squad, I mean, Wheeler's skill set, it could be particularly advantageous under the NFL's updated kickoff rules. Jones is actually showing he's a liability in that area. And that in the past, that's been his worth on the roster. But now, not so much. And I'm going to get to that. But let's bring in some new blood here. This regime has shown that we desire to improve in every aspect of this game, all three phases, and special teams is just so important. We already grabbed a transcendent kicker in the fourth round, Troy Taylor. He's already becoming kind of a cult hero here. I think his nickname is the Punt God. And personally, on top of that, I just really like the Wheeler signing. And I also think this is going to be a test if GM Ryan Poles, if he has a sentimental mentality. I mean, Jones was his first offensive pick when he took the job here in Chicago. Jones was the third round selection in the 2022 NFL draft. But honestly, I mean, he's done next to nothing to look like an NFL caliber receiver. And his work in the return game, that's become filled with mistakes. So there was this unimpressive rookie year, but let's be honest, this team was in full teardown mode. So let's be kind. Let's just give him grace for his rookie year. So now fast forward to last year. He brought in just 4 targets for 20 yards. He turned 8 carries into 51 more yards across 14 games. He also just had an absolutely terrible 62.2 passer rating when targeted. Why is this so bad? 62.2, that would have been 9th worst as a rating among 59 quarterbacks last year. So he just isn't needed on this roster as a wideout. We have our top 3 of Moore, Allen, and Odunze. And honestly, I'd love to see Tyler Scott. I'd love for him to get as many reps as possible. We need to develop this guy. And then you have dudes like Webster, Dante Pettis, even Colin Johnson. All these guys are hungry and bring more to the table as NFL receivers. Then there's the cap savings. It's not huge, but Chicago can also save $918,005 by cutting Jones before June 1, or over $1.1 million if it waits until after that date per spot track. He's also 27. I mean, the argument previously that he's of great value in the return game, but I'm also going to go through last year and show that he's actually a liability in that area. And in contrast, we've made a bit of an investment in Wheeler. Ian Wheeler, he signed a 3-year, $2.83 million contract with the Chicago Bears, including an average annual salary of $943,000 and change. He'll earn a base salary of $795,000 and only carry a cap hit of that same amount. And Wheeler's a baller. He helped lead Howard to back-to-back MEAC titles and its first ever trip to the Celebration Bowl this past season. I want to talk a little bit about what Wheeler brings. He brings I would say, a combo, blistering speed, fantastic vision, makes him a formidable threat in the return game, right? He also has reliable hands as a receiver, and that's more than I can say for Velus Jones. That further enhances his versatility. He can just be a gadget player in this offense from time to time. So my full meaning, he can fully fill the special teams role. We've now been trying to fill that with Jones Jr. And also, it's using the roster spot more effectively. He has almost zero use. I'm talking about Jones as a receiver. Fill this role with Ian Wheeler and still keep running back Travis Homer as he's of great use on special teams as well. We want to improve in all 3 facets of the game, and special teams sometimes gets overlooked, right? So let's go to the story on the Athletic about all the penalties, all the problems that Jones has presented on this roster. I mean, I've got to admit that picture's a little funny. Um, so I don't want to be mean, but the picture is kind of funny. In 2022, Jones had two muffed punts that led to two losses. He also failed to carve out a spot as a wide receiver, despite a huge absence of talent in that group in 2022. That lack of talent, it was even worse when Darnell Mooney, the best receiver on the roster, if you remember, he was the number one. He had his season cut short, but still, that was still enough for Jones to lose his job as the team's punt returner after these muffed catches, and he could not catch on as a wide receiver in that unit that was just bereft of talent. So then we moved to last year in 2023. His struggles continued, and we can go into this story. We can check it out and go into some of the areas that he messed up, but his struggles continued. He still couldn't find himself on the field as a receiver despite his blazing speed. I mean, beyond more, that should have been an easy thing to do if he was any good. When he did get a chance, he made huge mistakes. The biggest one, his time in Chicago, it might be forever be associated with this infamous drop in Week Eight's loss to the LA Chargers. He was wide open in the end zone. That's what that picture's from. Suddenly, however, he just inexplicably fell down. But despite that, he still had the opportunity to make the catch. He was lying on his back. The ball fell right on him. He bobbled the ball still and then dropped it. The video will, I think, haunt his career. And Alex Brown on NBC Sports Chicago, he had something to say about this. He was not pleased. I'm going to close down this story. You guys can check it out for yourselves. This is what Alex Smith had to say on NBC Sports Chicago's Football After Show. This should be his last game on the roster. It really should. It should be his last game. This is ridiculous. That touchdown changes the whole game. It changes everything in that moment. So you can look at it one way. I mean, the Bears eventually scored on that same drive, so the mistake didn't cost the Bears points, but the drop absolutely took the wind out of their sails when it could have been a huge spark. It also meant the Bears had to burn another 3.5 minutes of the game clock. That's when the team was trying to climb from a 17-0 first half deficit. But if you remember this game was still absolutely winnable. And to further hear from Brown, that touchdown only scores 6 points. I get that, but we don't know how this game plays out if he catches that touchdown. He doesn't catch it, so it changes the whole narrative of the game. But if you look back, that's one thing. It wasn't Jones's only mistake. It was just his most obvious one. He also opted to take the opening kickoff out of the end zone, but only managed to bring the ball out to the 20-yard line. We would have had the ball at the 25 if Jones had just taken a knee or a touchback. That's a smaller error, but as a kickoff specialist, he should know better. Later in the first quarter, he committed a fair catch interference penalty on a Bears punt that gave the Chargers great field position at their own 45-yard line. LA ended up scoring a touchdown on that drive, and it's just another example. 3 mistakes in one game. I don't want to be too harsh, but a fringe player just can't make it harder for his team to win. His worth does not even come close to counterbalancing that. Is that not enough for you? It's just one game, but let's look at the Saints game last year. We had a week 9 loss to the Saints. The Bears were just down 7 in the fourth quarter. They were trying to move the ball so they could tie the game. On one drive, they had to punt. Punter Trent Gill, he had a punt from his own end zone. He did a great job of getting the ball on the New Orleans side of the field. The Saints had good field position at their 47, but it could have been much, much worse. Then a Jones mistake. He did make it worse. Jones was called for a face mask penalty, even though he was far away from the play. That gave the Saints another 15 yards. They took over at the Bears 38. Bada bing. It also put the Saints near field goal position without running a play. We haven't heard much criticism from Jones coming from head coach Matt Eberflus or even from our GM, but special teams coach Richard Hightower, he had a big thing to say about this. And this is from Coach Hightower. We have a penalty, which is a bad penalty, 20 yards away from the play. which then moves the ball 15 yards close to the right outside field goal range. So our defense held, and Kyler, as we talked about earlier, he forced a missed kick from their kicker. But that's unacceptable. It's an unacceptable penalty. And why? Because we pride ourselves on situational football. And in that situation, we could have had the ball at the 50-yard line. That's from Richard Hightower. So let's see what Poles does here, right? Some people feel the fact that Jones was a third round pick, that's the reason why Jones is still on the roster. I want to give him the benefit of the doubt here, though. Poles, he's been someone who cuts his losses when his moves don't work. He cut PJ Walker despite signing him to a 3-year contract. I don't know if you remember that. Additionally, he shipped Chase Claypool out of town despite giving up a second rounder to acquire him. It should go to show that he should have no problem cutting Velus Jones since he's struggled. A little more on Wheeler before we go. He saw action in 42 games over the past 5 seasons at Howard. He logged 177 carries for 1,154 yards, 14 touchdowns, and he also caught 23 passes for 234 yards and another score in that span. He's 5'11", 205 pounds. He's going to contribute mostly as a returner at the outset. He'll look to secure a depth role in a backfield that includes DeAndre Swift, Roshan Johnson, Khalil Herbert, and then I talked about Travis Homer. He averaged 6.5 yards per carry during his career at Howard, but he also returned and covered kicks. And let's look at his combine scores. He ran a 4.3940, a 38.5 vertical, a 10.5-foot broad jump, a great shuttle time, 17 reps at only 5'9", 203 pounds. There's been like some discrepancies on his weight and height, but I'm seeing the consensus is that he's 5'11". So sorry about that 5'9" mark. So let's just chop it up. Athletic traits for Ian Wheeler are obvious. He's got elite speed, explosiveness. It's one thing to have traits and another thing entirely to put them to good use on the field. And that's exactly what Wheeler has done. He's low risk, low investment. He also fits into the mold of a player being able to exploit the new kickoff rule in the NFL for 2024. And Velus Jones just isn't cutting it. He's so vanilla, adding on all these mistakes. I think it's time for him to go. I want this extra running back to stick to this roster and also open up that extra roster spot from Velus Jones's spot just to make it a little easier for Wheeler to be able to stick with the team. I think it's a great move. You guys let me know what you think and bear down. Enjoy your holiday today. Happy Memorial Day, and we'll talk soon. See ya.